And welcome to the regular City Council meeting of the City of Bella Vista for Monday, February 24th. Glad you're here. Will you please rise and join us at the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll do the roll call of council. Councilmember Wozniak?
Here.
Lloyd?
Yes, here.
Flynn?
Here.
Fowler?
Here.
Burke?
Here.
Wilms?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We'll move to citizen input. The length of time to speak is 3 minutes, and I think our trustee clerk has his beeper going.
Yep.
And so the first this evening is Kurt Stoops. Mr. Stoops?
Thank you. My name is Kurt Stoops. I'm here on behalf of the Bella Vista Animal Shelter. I'm president of the board of directors, so I'm pleased to be here to talk to you tonight about microchipping. I know you're considering an ordinance to do away with dog licenses and tags in favor of microchipping. We are 100% behind that at the shelter. I just want to give you a couple numbers from last year. We took in 392 dogs from the city. 55.8% of those went back to the owners. Now, of the dogs that came in, if we take 100 dogs, for example, 60 of them had no collar. 25 had a collar but no tags. 10 had collars with tags, but they were out of date. About 5 have collars with tags and current dates. So out of 100, there might be 5 dogs that we could identify and actually try to get a hold of somebody. A microchip would avoid all of that. Lori May is here tonight, our shelter manager, and she just told me that in her 12 years, she's had 1 dog come in with a city tag. Leslie has not picked up a dog last year that had a city tag. So I think it's pretty much ineffective trying to put licenses and tags on dogs. If you go to microchipping, you can do it once, pay a fee, the animal's good for the rest of its life, and that's certainly a benefit. We recommend doing away with the tags, the license tags for collars altogether. You do get a tag when you microchip, so that can be put on your dog. So you have 2 things. You have a microchip and a tag. Anyway, that is my input for your item, I think, is a new business in B. And I'm going to say one other thing. I didn't give you all the topic, but we billed the city for $8,370 in January. That's 26% of our expenses to run the shelter. We're there every day, 366 days this year, taking care of dogs. I know, and I think most of you know, that the city is going to have to step up and pay more for our shelter. We're finding it very difficult to support our shelter going out to beat up businesses and individuals and try and get enough money. We have a good thing going here. It's a great shelter. We adopted a dog last year at 4 years and 4 months. We just don't give up on these animals. So I hope you'll consider that in the future. This year we didn't get an increase. Sometime in mid-year I may have to come back and say, please help us.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Leslie Ann Pratt?
For those that don't know who I am, I'm actually the animal control officer for the Bella Vista Police Department. I've been doing this for just over a year, and like Kurt said, I have not once picked a dog up with a city license on it. Not once. I've never even seen one. So my job when I pick a dog up, first thing I'm going to do is scan it for a chip. That gives me a number. Then I have about 6 different companies that I have to call to find out who the owner is. That can take me about 30 minutes. So I'm sitting in a truck with an anxious dog waiting to find owner information. Having the chips registered in-house at the police department is going to save me time. It's going to save the city money. Every dog that I bring to the shelter is $110 that the city gets charged. We're not going to make money on the microchip registration. We're going to save money. And we're going to save a lot of dogs. I'm going to be taking dogs back to their home instead of to the shelter. I think we need to do away with the city tags and do an in-house microchip registry.
Thank you, Officer Pratt. Okay. That ends the citizen input. We'll now go to council reply. Is there anybody who wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
I had a couple questions for the animal shelter folks. First one is how much does the microchipping cost? If we institute this microchipping, my understanding is the animal shelter is going to do it and the people will pay for it. How much is it? And the second thing is, when we find a stray dog and we are able to identify the owner and return the dog to the owner, does anything happen to them? Do they get a fine because their dog was loose, or just say, here's your dog back? Or just wondering how that works.
Leslie Ann, I see you stirring. Do you want to answer?
So, for the second part of your question, if they are a repeat offender, they usually get one get out of jail free card, is what I like to call it. After that, they do get a citation for dog at large.
And how much is that?
$55 reclaim fee if they are taken to the shelter.
Okay.
Anybody that comes into the shelter, $20, gets you a microchip. It'll take you a lot longer to fill out the form than it will to get the chip.
I can tell you the dog at large citations, the judge charges somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $75.
Any veterinarian will also do it. I don't know what they'll charge. It's probably fair.
Okay.
You can do
Thank
it
you.
either way.
For the benefit of television, I don't know that you picked that up. The answer was it cost $20 to microchip the dog at the shelter. And the second answer was you get one free pass if your dog's loose, and the second time you will get a fine, and I guess it's usually $50 to $75.
Good. Yes, sir.
Wanted to just take a minute. I've had, since this came up at work session for the City Council about a week ago, I've been able to kind of do a deep dive on some of this. I had the opportunity to meet today with Mr. Stoops, Officer Pratt, and with Lori, who manages the animal shelter. And first and foremost, I think the most important thing that needs to be said is we have really good people that are doing animal control for the city of Bella Vista. We do it in conjunction with the animal shelter, which is a 501c. I really want to be an advocate for our animal shelter. I think it's a fabulous part of Bella Vista, a really important function that many cities have integrated into the city structure itself. In our case, our animal shelter is adjunct. It is a partnership to the city. When the city makes payments to the animal shelter, that's not done out of a sense of charity or benevolence on our part. That's done because the city has a responsibility to participate in animal control directly like that. So it's not a profit center. It's never intended to be. I think of the speakers that came tonight to speak to us, one of the things that really rings out with me that we talked about today is we do have very low compliance with dog licenses. And perhaps the same would be true with microchipping. I think we're going to make a good case for microchipping as we move forward with whatever method that we have. So that needs to improve. I think an awareness campaign that the city would partner with the animal shelter, with other community services that we have, for example, the Weekly Vista. If we could partner together and raise awareness for these are the city's expectations for dog owners. I've talked to a number of dog owners who did not even know that there was a requirement that their dog be licensed. So I think we're going to gain out of this. Microchipping is definitely the way to go. We're going to discuss, it's coming up on our agenda tonight, we're going to discuss some alternatives to making it an absolute mandate that says every dog owner must microchip or you are in violation of the law. There's an alternative proposition that would make that incentive based, and that boils down to merely, you've got $20. Do you want to come give it to the city for your dog license, or do you want to spend it on microchipping and your license from that point forward? Your dog has a lifetime license. You do not need to re-register it after you've provided proof of microchipping. So we're going to discuss that a little while later in our agenda, but that's kind of the angle that I'm proposing that we go in. Rather than be heavy-handed and require everybody to have their dog microchipped, we create a very powerful incentive that would achieve the exact same outcomes.
Anyone else?
Yes, one question would be for Lori in the shelter is, with the microchipping, you indicated there were 6 companies out there that provide that service. Is there a registration that we should be considering of the microchip numbers with you or with the shelter to simplify that process, and also provides a cross-reference that that dog has been chipped or licensed, if you will?
I can answer that. I can try to. I can answer that question. We're going to build a database in the current system we have, which is iWorks, which we're going to share with the shelter, and that's going to be part of this. We're going to build a database, and as we get dogs, I have a form that we can either give to owners, they can take to their vet, get their dog microchipped, bring the form to us, we enter in the database, which the shelters can have as well access to, or they go to the shelter, get their pet microchipped, and the information we put in the database. We'll build an internal database to get around that. That'll be for this area, because you're right, there are several different microchipping companies that don't share their data, and that was one of the things we had to get through is a common database. We'll have to build that ourselves.
I guess taking my personal example, I have 2 dogs, 2 licenses every year, and so should we plan to file that information at the police department or at the shelter? I guess is what I'm leading up to. How do we get those dogs registered that have been microchipped?
So I guess with Councilmember Bork's, he had mentioned about pushing out information. I think that'd be part of what we have to push out to folks is if your dog's already microchipped, bring the police department or the shelter the information so it could be inputted into our database.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, thank you. The next item of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 27th City Council. Are there any errors or omissions?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Wayne?
Okay, roll call vote. Councilmember Wilms,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. By law, every year, an Arkansas mayor has to report back to the constituents on highlights of the previous year. It's called the State of the City as opposed to State of the Union. I'm going to give you highlights tonight. I'm not going to read the whole thing. There is a full copy of my report sitting on the table behind Kevin. So just help yourself if you'd like one. So this is for the year 2019, and then we're going to take a peek a little ahead for the year to come. We ended 2019 with an unrestricted reserve balance of $7.8 million, which is $4 million greater than our budgeted expected ending balance of $3.8. This ending balance of $7.8 million equals 50% of our annual unrestricted revenue of $15.8. And what that means is we have a financial policy that says we must have at a minimum 25% of unrestricted on hand at all times for our financial reserve. At the moment, we have 50%, so we're in extremely good shape. The total 2019 general fund revenues exceeded the budget by $700,000. And of course, the majority was the approval of the internet sales tax. The street fund revenues fell short by $100,000 compared to the previous year. But the reason is, in the previous year, we actually had a FEMA reimbursement for $151,000. So that's why you end up with a shortfall. The general operating fund, capital improvement, and debt service, which is the paying of the 3 loans that we have, expenditures of $17.7 million, exceeded 2018 by 3.0, but came in under budget by $4.2 million. In 2019, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the fire department. The fire department also won an honorable mention for the fire department's community paramedic program as a 2019 Arkansas Trendsetter City in the Arkansas Business Publications annual competition. Our fire department was the first in the nation to deploy cerebral oximetry monitors in 2 of our ambulances. This technology allows the paramedics to monitor blood flow to the brain in real time. Over time, we intend to deploy these units throughout the entire fleet of 6 ambulances. Last year, the city also acquired 3 acres of land at the corner of Glasgow and Edinburgh, where our replacement fire station number 3 will reside, providing we get a yes on the bond. In the spring of 2019, we had our first financial audit conducted by an outside professional audit firm, Landmark, rather than using the state audit team. This was in preparation for the bond issue in the spring of this year, and we received a clean bill of health. Our human resources team, and our director is here this evening, successfully reduced our health benefits from a projected increase of 16 to 18% to less than 9%, and there were no increases for our other offerings, such as dental. Nice job. Our police department added our second K9 unit through generous donations from the community, which is greatly appreciated. And we have now outfitted all patrol units with mobile computers. On the IT side of the house, we continue to monitor and strengthen our network, particularly in this day of age where ransomware attacks on both private and public sector IT infrastructure is on the rise. We have also installed dual internet facilities at every single property, which means AT&T and Cox. So if one is down, then hopefully the other is up. We have confirmed that they do not share the same lines, which often happens. And if they're both up, then we have some great bandwidth. Our street department oversaw the resurfacing of 41 miles this past year. This is a new annual record. On August the 26th, I'm sure that you remember that a straight line wind event blew through our city, bringing down over 300 trees on our roads, most ensnared in Carroll Electric lines. Streets, fire, and police immediately responded to clear the main arteries. Over the ensuing 3 days, streets worked closely with Carroll Electric to clear and open all remaining streets. The city subsequently hosted a tree and brush curb pickup campaign. All the debris was collected by city workers and brought to a central location where it was ground up into mulch by a contractor and hauled away. By the end of October, the job was completed. This was a huge undertaking. Our legal department had a very busy year. I'm pleased to report that the transition from Bentonville District Court to our own district court was completed in 2019. It took us 2 years and double the court time for our attorney, but it has been done. Our library continues to flourish. More and more subscribers of all ages are using the facility, and the expansion could not have occurred at a better time. Again, on the table behind Kevin, there are some high-level plans that you can see as to what it's going to look like. We're optimistic that probably by April sometime, maybe sooner, it should be open. It's going to look great. Communication with our residents continues to be crucial using all media that is available to us, namely print, electronic, and social media. Immediately following the straight line windstorm in August, our communications director created and executed a communications plan for storm cleanup, including working with the streets department to disseminate the information regularly to our constituents. The trails and future expansion of the Razorback Greenway continues to contribute to our community, not only in terms of growth in accommodation and restaurant tax receipts, but also in positioning Bella Vista as a great place to live and play. In 2019, our new home residential permits totaled 278 compared with 262 in 2018. To put it into perspective, at the end of 2013, we issued 35. And there appears to be no end in sight. In January, we saw a record of 32 issued. So what's on the horizon for 2020? Assuming the bond issue is approved by our residents on March the 3rd, we will begin working on all 3 projects, 1 police and 2 fire. The police department will add 2 detectives to our CID department. In fact, 1 has already been assigned. Our community development services team continues to work with Hull dermatology contractors to complete the Sunside Road retention wall and to finally repair the road. The 3rd annual 6 and 60 cleanup of Highway 71 is scheduled for March 28th, courtesy of Positively Bella Vista. Our annual citywide garage sale is set for April 24th and 25th, thanks to the efforts of our communications director. The opening of new retail space, Shops on the Trail, on the east side of 71 between Crylike and Walgreens will occur this year. We hope to conclude the comprehensive land use plan, which looks out to the year 2040. 2020 census begins on April the 1st. It is very important that everybody be counted. So much of our grant funds are based on census. Finally, we plan to resurface parts of Highland Boulevard, which the contractor was unable to complete in 2019 due to bad weather. We look forward to the opening of the library and the Little Sugar soft surface trails. We plan to remount another ambulance. It's much cheaper and much more efficient than buying a new one. And we will complete the full review of our employee handbook, which we will talk about in a few minutes. As always, on behalf of all members of City Council, I extend our thanks to the many volunteers in our community who tirelessly help with the animal shelter, trail maintenance, the recycling center, and the museum, our churches, and our community groups and service clubs. Truly, without question, Bella Vista is indeed a place to call home. Thank you. Also under reports, we have the monthly financial report. Again, behind Kevin, there are copies, so you can see our full report as of the end of last year. Are there any questions about the financial report? Okay.
One question, Mayor. In the introduction, you indicated that we had a $4 million greater than budgeted. Was that due to projects committed that hadn't been expended?
Correct.
Is that why the carryover was there? Thought so.
Is the light on?
Yep.
Okay. Are the lights on? Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Plus, we also received some monies from the Walton Family Foundation. If there are no others, I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read all proposed ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Councilmember Flynn,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Okay, we have one piece of old business, which is a resolution adopting amendments to the City of Bella Vista Employee Handbook. This was tabled from January. You may remember that there were some legal questions that came up, and so we tabled it so that Mr. Kelly would have time to actually look at the situation. We are prepared to move forward tonight, and further on in the business, there's actually the end result of his study. Counselor, do you want to add anything at this point?
I just wanted to remind, I mentioned this at the work session, that the administration created a new draft that included just one more change from what was in the original tabled version. And so in order for you to consider that, there needs to be a motion to amend to go to the latest version of that so that you can have the latest version of the administration's suggestion for your consideration before you have final debate and approval on that or amendments or whatever is going to happen. So
Okay,
just want to bring that to your attention.
So we'll do that right away.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so you're voting on the amendment. Wayne?
Councilmember Lloyd,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
So the resolution is adopting amendments to the City of Bella Vista Employee Handbook as amended. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, now we can move,
Further debate or call the roll.
okay?
How do we deal with amendments?
You got to make a motion.
Okay. I would make a motion to amend the document in 3 areas. One having to do with repayment of tuition assistance monies, to extend it out to a 3-year period rather than a 2-year period, slightly adjusting the time frame and the percentage at the end of that.
Larry, let me say one thing. There's a motion and a second on the floor to approve. So I guess there could be further debate after the motion and second, and I guess a motion to amend would be deemed in order during that period of time. So I guess if there's a question of order, I saw some questions.
Okay, so we'll vote on.
I think that would be in order probably for him to offer his amendments and a motion and then deal with that
After
and then
we
go
approve.
back to final.
And this is only the first reading too, right?
This is a
This
resolution.
is a resolution.
It's a resolution.
I'm sorry,
It's a
reading the wrong part.
final
My bad.
action. Yeah.
So you're saying to let him
I'm
move
saying
now?
let Larry make his
Okay.
motion to amend.
So the first amendment was a repayment of tuition assistance monies in a slightly different fashion than presented. I guess the rationale is that we invest in our employees by sending them to school. That includes the paramedic training as well as an tuition cap of $1,500, which is not pocket change. So the anticipation or the rationale was to get a return on that investment by having the employees continue for a longer period of time to have that balance or repayment down to 0. The second item of adjustment was relative to jury duty. The current document that we have says that employees on jury duty will turn over their payment at the end of that jury duty to the city. The amendment that's proposed in this draft omits that. I think being consistent with some of the other neighboring communities, I would expand the jury duty to include witness and testimony services that might be involved. With service up to 3 days or less, we waive the reimbursement of the payment to the individual. If it's more than that, because we allow up to 30 days of departure, then more than 3 days, they would turn that money over to the city as an offset. Our code currently, and as amended by this action tonight, allows up to 30 days of jury duty leave. That can create quite a strain on our operation by either requiring us to go to temporary employees in the case of office staff, or may require overtime in terms of field operations, police department, fire department. The third item is bereavement leave. I know at the meeting work session there was some discussion of extending that for special family members. I'm not in favor of that, but would propose that we add up to 4 hours of paid leave for non-family or non-immediate members as defined in the policy. So if you have a close friend, you want to go to the funeral, it allows you to do that.
Okay, so Counselor, we would handle each amendment separately?
No, he's made one motion that includes all these.
Okay,
So it's one second and one debate and one vote.
okay. So we have a motion on the floor for all three. Is there a seconder?
Well, there are 5 on the sheet that I've got.
No, you got a new one tonight.
I've only got 3.
Yeah.
Well, is there any
Everybody got a new one.
conversation about it?
Okay, I'm sorry. There's a
Or are
new.
we just going to go straight to vote?
No.
There's not a
No.
Okay, there's a motion to amend. There has to be a
It
second
has to be a second, and then we go
for there to be
into discussion.
consideration of the motion.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a second?
So the motion
There
will die
being
for
no-
lack of a second. So now, Mayor, where you are is you've got a motion to approve and a second, and now there's further debate on it as is presented. in
Okay,
the
so
agenda.
we're back to the original one as amended. Discussion.
So this is just for the resolution on the table right now. This is Larry's failed.
No.
Larry's died.
It
It
died.
dies for lack of a second.
That's what I said.
So Larry's proposal is died.
Died.
So now we're back to the
Original amended.
administration's
Well, I just
proposal.
want to say one thing about his proposal on Amendment 3. There never was any amendment to change. Oh, he did want to change it a little bit, right?
Look, his motion to amend has died, so
Right.
So there's no point.
there's no reason to debate it anymore.
Okay.
It's done.
Okay, anybody else? All right. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to thank our HR department for all their hard work. This was a gargantuan task.
Yes, thank you, Glenda. That was a very large task.
I would like to say, too, that I think the HR department did a great job, and I laud them for that insight and for the upgrades, including our staff attorney. I do, however, in deference to perhaps Mayor Christie, think that reviewing the personnel manual is getting into the weeds. It really is not. It does affect our bottom line cost of operation, as I've enumerated in the education reimbursement section and in the jury duty aspect of it. It does affect our bottom line. It does have an impact on us. Each of the counselors sitting up here and the mayor and our department heads are responsible for monitoring, managing, and seeing that the revenues that we receive, the taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, personal property taxes, are effectively and carefully spent, and that we've done due diligence in overseeing that. And those are the areas that I've expressed in my prior amendments that failed.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Wayne?
Well, we still, we skipped it, so I don't know if the people that originally moved, Waz, you made a motion to approve it before?
There was a second.
Yeah, there was a second.
And there was a
John seconded it?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll,
So now we're ready for a roll.
okay, very good.
This is on question
This
of
is-
adoption of the resolution.
Adoption.
As amended.
Okay. Councilmember Lloyd.
Yes.
Councilmember Wozniak.
Yes.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Fowler.
Yes.
Wilms.
No.
Flynn.
Yes.
Carried. 5-1.
Thank you. We'll now move into new business. The first is an ordinance amending Section 27-2 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to permit Class 1 electric bicycle operation on public use city trails. This is the first reading. For those of you at home and here, we've had a lot of requests for the use of the bicycle, the electrical bicycle. On the trails. It's come in through us, through the Walton Family Foundation. It's come to us directly. It's come from Trailblazers, and the POA have also been requested to entertain this as well. These are Class 1, and what that means is that it is an electric assist. There's no motor spitting out exhaust or making any kind of noise, and it does not exceed 20 miles an hour. So if it hits 20 miles an hour, it cuts out. The operator also has the option of turning it off. We have also been told by those who build the trails and trailblazers, they will not destroy the trails. Not at all. In fact, it will allow more people to use the trails than perhaps are using them today. So just wanted to make that clear to everyone. So this is the first reading, and as it is an ordinance, there will be 2 more at subsequent meetings unless someone decides that we should suspend the rules and move to third and final.
I would make a motion to suspend the rules and move to final reading.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Wayne?
This vote is on the motion to
Suspend the rules.
Right. Okay. Councilmember Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
carried.
Okay, I will now read third and final. Amending Section 27-2 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to permit Class 1 electric bicycle operation on public use city trails. Is there any discussion? Move.
So move. Motion
Second.
to approve.
Thank you. Wayne?
Who seconded?
Second.
Was. All right. Councilmember Lloyd,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. The next is an ordinance, and this is the first reading. It's repealing and replacing Section 4-27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to eliminate the dog licensing requirement and to enact a mandatory microchip requirement for dogs. Now, Councilmember Burke, I believe that you may want to speak to this.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The ordinance, as it's been put forward, mandates that every dog owner must have a microchip or be in violation of Bella Vista law. I would prefer that we work towards an option, an incentive-based option for dog owners to microchip their dogs and achieve the exact same outcomes without mandating. So I've put forward an alternative version of this. If the council will indulge me, I'll just read the 3 points on here because I do think this reflects that all of us, the people involved in animal control, the city, are all pulling on the rope in the same direction. It's just considering an alternative to a mandate. And so the 3 points are: microchipping of dogs has become a less expensive and more effective means of tracking dog ownership. A microchip is a simple, safe procedure and allows Bella Vista Animal Control to return a lost dog promptly to the owner in most cases, and in doing so reduces the burden and cost of the Bella Vista Animal Shelter to care for the animal until its owner is found using conventional means. And finally, the city will partner with the animal shelter to raise awareness among residents about the cost, simplicity, and benefits of microchipping, and to inform of how the procedure can be scheduled. I think that last one is probably the most important one. As everybody has noted tonight, our compliance by dog owners in Bella Vista is very low. In talking to a number of dog owners, I have found that awareness for the current ordinance is very low. We need to do better. We're all moving towards the idea that microchipping is a superior solution, but we need to educate and inform and raise awareness for exactly what microchipping amounts to, and that is the purpose of me providing an alternative amendment, an amended ordinance. And therefore, I move that we adopt the amended version of Section 427.
Gonna read it.
Pardon?
Read it. You didn't read this down here.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Counselor?
Good idea.
All right, so
if
you're
I could.
offering a motion to amend the proposal. You said to adopt, but a motion to amend the
Thank
current
you.
proposal to substitute
Yes.
this, which you're going to tell us more about.
And Councilmember Fowler, yeah, just prompted me to say, let's read what the actual ordinance would be. And that is, all dogs in the city 3 months old or older are required to be annually licensed by the city at an annual fee of $20 per dog. Further, all dog license fees are waived, and a one-time registration is allowed for owners that present proof that they have a certified service dog or they have a microchipped dog. So if your dog is microchipped, preferably by the animal shelter, they will provide you proof of microchipping. That can be brought to City Hall for a one-time registration. You don't have to do an annual registration for your dog. You'll come in and register your dog one time for the life of the dog, and it will cost you $20 to do that. If you really are dead set on not microchipping your animal, then you'll pay $20 annually for your dog license.
So, Mayor, that's a motion to amend. There needs to be a second.
Okay.
I'll second.
So now you can have debate on the.
Okay, now, I'll kick off the discussion. The preference is, of course, that we would get out of the license business altogether. One of the things I find a little troubling is that we will say that we will waive the $20 if you've got proof. So someone comes to the wicket at City Hall, and our receptionist, Sally Guerin, who looks after the issuance of the of the license, would say that'll be $20, or you could be microchipped up at the animal shelter, or if your dog is animal chipped right now, then we will have the ability to give you a one-time waiver, correct? Now, most people that come to City Hall to get the license don't bring the animal, and they won't know this. So then we will have to say to them, we need you to go home and find, Chief, you said that they get, or Kurt maybe, that you get a copy of the chip that you could actually put on the dog's collar as well. Kurt, I think you mentioned that. So the owner does have some proof. So the owner would have to go back home and bring it in order to waive the fee. If they can't find it, the next option would be to bring the dog to City Hall. We don't have a scanner at City Hall.
I don't see that scenario whatsoever. I think. Go ahead, Jim.
You also get a.
Mayor, you have to recognize people.
I will. I'm sorry. Yes. Okay,
You also
Jim.
get a piece of paper that said your dog's been chipped. That should take care of the tag, should it not?
If they have the paper, that's true.
So it's one or the other to City Hall.
Right.
To
Mayor-
prove you're square.
Mayor Christie, I think the appropriate analogy would be in the case of a rabies vaccination.
Yes.
The only way to present proof of a rabies vaccination is to bring documentation from your veterinarian that the dog has been vaccinated. So it's the same thing for microchipping. When
Okay.
you microchip your dog, you are given a validation, a piece of paper that says your dog is microchipped. And that is essential to being able to prove your dog is microchipped. Yeah, I don't see bringing dogs into City Hall. I don't see any of that as being necessary. And I think a key part of this is awareness. And so we don't want people stumbling into City Hall and don't know that the city ordinance has changed. We want to use the city resources, social media, the other available services in the city, for example, our newspaper, to get the word out. The animal shelter has a very active social media presence. They would participate in this with us. So raising awareness, I think, is key no matter what we do.
So we would still, however, be in the license business. And as we heard earlier, that wreaks havoc both with the animal shelter and with the police. So we would never get away from the licensing. Even if we incented as much as possible, there may be some who still want to have a license for whatever reason. Linda.
Yes, I think that having two possible systems is much more confusing than switching from the one to the other. It still requires the city to go out at the beginning of every year, buy a whole bunch of tags and hooks, and have them available at City Hall along with the sign up with the forms. I've been a long-time dog owner and trainer, and most responsible breeders send their puppies out already microchipped. Pretty much any shelter in the country doesn't send the puppies or the grown dogs out until they're microchipped. So they're already microchipped. Having it a confusing double system would be an extra cost to the city, and I think not something that we need to do.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in?
Well,
Doug?
I'm not going to belabor it or anything. First of all, I just like to say, as well, thank you to the animal shelter. I have been down and toured the facility, and I was really impressed, and also just by the dedication of the people that work there. Everybody really has their heart and soul into it, and they really believe in what they're doing, and that was really a neat thing to see. I'll be honest with you, I was going to propose practically the exact same scenario that Councilman Burke did before we came in. I didn't know that this was in the works before I came in. I don't really support a mandate on microchipping. I don't know. There are a lot bigger things out there, but it just feels like a little overreach to me to go out and tell someone that they have to do this. I understand that it feels like it's maybe the right thing to do, but that's not for me to decide for someone else. So, and two, I would like to say this is just the first reading tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we do still have some time to think about this or maybe work through something a little bit different. But I'm not just for a blanket mandate. It just doesn't feel right to me.
Okay, Larry?
We have two dogs. One is a rescue dog. She was microchipped. We don't have a tag to put on her to say that. The other puppy we acquired from a breeder in Missouri, and she's microchipped as well, but we don't have a tag as referenced here that maybe the shelter gives out. The breeder did not give us one that says they're microchipped, but I know she is. So I guess I'm a little confused about that. We have the documentation for it, but we don't have any tags to put on the dog to say they're microchipped.
But you do have the documentation.
We have some documentation, yes.
Yeah, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
Larry, sorry.
In reference to Doug's comment about mandating this, we currently mandate a license. All we're doing is changing it from mandating a license to mandating microchipping. We're not going from a suggested system to a mandated. We're just changing the method of the mandate.
There's a difference between, well, you talk about a chip on the collar? Or?
No, it's a chip that gets inserted under the skin of the dog.
No, I understand that. It's just not for me to tell someone that they have to do that.
I think Linda's point is we're already telling them that they must get a license, and all she's saying now is instead of you must get a license, you must get a chip instead.
I understand.
Okay.
Some people just probably may prefer not to chip their dog for whatever reason.
Okay.
Well,
they do get their dog back faster, and anyway.
According to the
Sir, go ahead.
According to the records, apparently most people don't want to license their dogs either, based upon the report tonight.
That's right.
So I think
exactly.
it's 6 of one and half a dozen the other. We might do better with the microchipping because then, for sure, they would be microchipped before they got returned.
Well, I think the public educational awareness, is a huge benefit through
goes a
all
long
this as
way.
well, and may convince a lot of people to do that, but not everybody. So,
John?
The argument about public awareness, you can do that either way. It's not tied in with a particular system. Obviously, we want to raise awareness of requirements as well as we can, but it doesn't. The amendment has nothing to do with raising awareness. We'd raise awareness anyway. So.
Okay. Larry?
One last comment. I like the wording in the draft document that was submitted with our handouts tonight, but I like the wording, the owner, the keeper, or harborer of a dog. I think all dogs of an owner, keeper, or harborer might be more clear and explicit in the language suggested by Councilor Burke as a suggestion for adjustment.
Okay, well, we're still talking about Councilor Burke's motion.
Right.
Is
There
there
was
any
a
other,
motion and a second on the floor to,
right? Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to vote.
On the amendment, Mr. Burke's amendment.
Correct.
okay? This is calling the roll on the amendment. Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes?
Flynn,
No.
Lloyd,
No.
4-2. It's passed.
Okay.
So, Mayor, at this point, the title has changed on this proposal. So my recommendation is that you go ahead and read that title tonight, which would be just to make sure we've read it the first time, and it has in fact been read as it has been amended. So if you would just read the revised title for the first time, then we can get that in the minutes.
Okay. So the first reading amended Section 4.27 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista regarding the dog licensing requirement and incentivizing dog microchipping.
So you're still on first reading with this.
Right. Okay. So we move on and we'll visit this again next month. Okay, the next is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to add a section 10.26 sick leave and a section 14.18 sick leave to clarify sick leave accruals for uniformed firefighters and uniformed police officers and to ensure compliance with the state. This is what was raised last month that created us to table our amendments to the handbook. And Mr. Kelly, thank you for digging this up. And sir, would you like to address this?
There are two state laws, one deals with fire, one deals with police, that dictate uniform sick leave for each. And it gives a range of what those shall be and gives the council certain wiggle room within that to set it to a certain amount or a different amount. And it says that in the state statute by ordinance. You all have done that previously and set those by resolution by adopting the appropriate employee handbook. So what this ordinance does, if you look at it, it says for purposes, there's two different sections, one for fire, one for police. That's why they're separate and why there are two different numbers referenced. But for purposes of each of those state statutes, it says the council shall determine sick leave for uniformed, either fire or police, through the adoption or modification of said amounts provided in the City of Bella Vista Employee Handbook. So really what you said is by ordinance, we will determine these amounts by adoption of resolution through the handbook. And so we have just made sure we don't have any ticky procedural questions that could arise because we set this amount by resolution rather than by an ordinance. So this it doesn't change anything. It doesn't do anything in and of itself. What you said in the employee handbook is what the amounts are. This just clears a potential, and I'm not even sure it would be a real threat, but clears a potential legal issue regarding the manner of the adoption of the sick leave.
So it's more just belt and suspenders.
It's belt and suspenders and procedure, yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion at all?
And I would request this be moved ahead third and final.
Third and final?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
Okay.
I move that we go to third and final reading.
Second.
Suspend the rules.
Okay.
Any discussion? So you're voting on the move
Doug,
to go
you
to third?
seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're voting on the motion to move to third and final?
Right. Councilmember Lloyd,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes?
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
carried.
Thank you. So I'm now going to read it for the third time. Amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Bella Vista to add a section 10.26 sick leave and a section 14.18 sick leave to clarify sick leave accruals for uniformed firefighters and uniformed police officers and to assure compliance with state law. Is there any discussion at all? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Wayne?
Yep. Okay. Councilmember Wozniak,
Yes?
Wilms,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Carried 6-0.
Thank you. We move on from ordinances and go to resolutions. The first is approving the mayor's reappointment of Doug Farner to the Bella Vista Planning Commission for a 4-year term expiring March the 1st, 2004. Is there any discussion? Or 24, excuse me. Is there any discussion at all?
Is there any clarification about whether there's a conflict with county justice?
That would be Doug's personal conflict, so it doesn't create a conflict for the city for him to be named.
Okay,
He
all right.
could, if he reaches a point where he thinks he's conflicted and can't do both, he might have to choose.
It's not a conflict on our side, it might be a
No,
conflict
it
on
would be
their side.
potentially an issue for Doug,
Okay.
but not for us.
All right.
Gotta get elected
Okay.
first.
Anything else?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Councilmember Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Lloyd.
Yes.
Carried 6-0.
The next is a resolution awarding bid and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with Pinnacle Emergency Vehicles in an amount not to exceed $158,000 for a remount of a 2011 4x4 Chief XL Braun ambulance for the fire department. So when I mentioned my State of the City address earlier, I mentioned that we were going to do this. We have done this for the last 2 years, and in essence what we do is we send the ambulance off, the box is taken off the chassis, it is repurposed, modernized, whatever the chief feels that needs to be done, and then we put it back on a new chassis with a new cab and a new engine. It comes back to us complete, and we get the old chassis back. And in keeping with past years, we are going to repurpose this one and make it yet another brush fire. Is that correct? It'll be a brush fire vehicle because it's too difficult to get the big pumpers out into the fields and everything else. If we have a brush fire, these are much more agile and lighter. So that's the way that this is going to work. Is there any discussion at all? Yes, sir.
Does the $158,000 include the conversion for the brush fire purpose?
No, that's separate.
That would be a separate addition, or has that been budgeted?
That's budgeted. It's in the operations side.
Okay. All right.
This 158, by the way, is in the approved 2020 budget.
Yeah, I know that.
If there's no further discussion, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
All right. Again, a roll call vote. Councilmember Flynn,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Burke.
Yes.
Carried 6-0.
Thank you. The next is a resolution making various adjustments to the 2020 city budget. We do this every year. We have a number of funds that are restricted. In other words, someone has given us money, a grant, or we even have residents who give money for a very specific purpose to the PD, to the FD, or for something else. We hold that separate from other funds. We don't know what the ending balance of that is going to be until we get the books closed at the end of the year, because payments could continue to flow until the end of the year. So the money is in the bank, but it's not put into the budget until we do this type of resolution. There are far too many to go through. It includes the SAFER grant, for example, for the fire department. It has library donations in various forms. It's grant revenue for the Mercy Way Bridge. But it also includes $300,000 for library expenses. So for those of you who are not familiar, the library is set up so that the land and the building are owned by a private foundation. They are not owned by the city. The operation, books, the maintenance on the building is the responsibility of the city. So when the foundation was planning to put the extension on, they approached us about furniture, and IT. And we agreed that we would pledge $300,000. Now, we put it in the budget last year thinking it was going to be spent. It was not. We did not put it in the budget this year. The money is in the bank because the architect has been working with the foundation and our library director pricing out all the furniture that we are going to need, and that pricing didn't get finished until the beginning of January. So I'm not a big fan of rollovers, just to say, well, we had 300,000, so we'll move it over again. Now that we have concrete examples of the furniture that's going to be used, and again, it's in the, I call it a brochure, but it's really a very large library document that's back there, so you can see the actual furniture. It may not be exactly what's there, because who knows if it's going to be on back order or whatnot, but we have tried to refine it as best as we possibly can. So now we come back and we ask council to approve this change and add it now back into the budget. As I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of rollovers, automatic rollovers. So, any discussion at all? Larry?
Where are we on the Mercy Way Bridge design and moving to construction, just as a curiosity?
Doug, we had a bill come in today that Carrie showed me, and I think that might be the final on the design, if I remember correctly. Is that correct? 95? Okay.
So does this, Doug, does this go to RDOT for review and approval at this stage?
It's there now, we're waiting.
Okay. Timeline for turnaround, a month, 6 weeks, 6 months?
RDOT, who knows?
Less than that.
Mm.
We're getting ready to start on right-of-way acquisition.
Okay. So the right-of-way is defined in the plans?
Yes, sir.
Do we need approval from RDOT to proceed with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You do.
I think we should make every effort to expedite that effort to move the project forward. We have the funding for it. It's not a big cost to the city at this point because of the benevolence of the Walton Foundation. I'd like to see the project move forward and completed
As would we all. It took 3 years for a traffic light. I'm hoping it's not going to be 3 years for this.
Well, I think the longer we wait, the more competition we're going to have with other projects around the northwest Arkansas area.
But we're not waiting.
And for steel, a big item I think in this project is going to be steel, is it not?
Steel and concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, our engineers are pushing it with our docs.
So I guess I would encourage our staff to put pressure on RDOT for the review and approval process and for moving the engineer to the bidding stage as soon as we can.
Okay, anybody else?
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Further discussion? Wayne?
All right. Councilmember Wozniak,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. The final resolution is amending the 2020 city budget in the amount of $175,000 to provide for carryover of street department resurfacing expenses authorized in the 2019 city budget but not expended. We got a break last December with the weather, and so the paving contractor came back and started to go at it again, and it really looked as if he was going to be able to get it all done. Then the weather came back again, and by the time that weather moved in, we had already approved the budget. Highlands Boulevard in various sections needs to be resurfaced, and we were not able to do it in time by the end of the year. So again, not to do rollovers, we're coming back and asking council to approve the additional 175 that was not spent last year, so the money's in the bank, so that we can put it towards Highlands Boulevard this year. I know it's clear as mud sometimes, but unfortunately this kind of stuff happens with timing. Any discussion at all?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Wilms,
Yes.
Wozniak,
Yes.
carried 6-0.
Thank you. Meetings and announcements. The next City Council work session will be Monday, March 16th at 5:30 in the Bella Vista City Hall Conference Room. The next regular meeting of City Council will be Monday, the 23rd of March at 6:30 here in the Court Building. The Planning Commission work session for Thursday, the 27th, has been canceled due to lack of business. The Planning Commission regular meeting on March the 9th, I suspect, will also be canceled. The Board of Zoning Adjustments will be March 17th at 5:30 here in the court. The Board of Construction Appeals, if required, will be March the 10th here in the court building. And there'll be a public meeting on the bond issue February 26th at the Metfield Clubhouse at 5:30. And with that, thank you very much for coming out this evening, and we are adjourned.